You can hear me? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming again. If at any time you want some refreshments, we have food, coffee, and some cold water over there. We're trying to start right on time because there were lots of questions last night, and we want to give people as much time as possible to ask questions. And just to know that if you don't get your question answered tonight, you can write it down. We will put it up on the website and get back to you with the answers. So I do want to welcome you for coming out on this beautiful evening and staying engaged in this process that's been very long and complex. As you know, it's been almost 5 years since Sutter left this hill, and we've gone through some various processes and trying to figure out which is hard for us, given the fact that it's been 82 acres. I think it's the biggest project that the county has ever had. So, we're learning a lot in the process, and we're at this now process that this is a sale of a property. Anything that was recommended is simply theoretical. So the first process is sell the property. Second process is come up with the concept and design and density and all of that. And that involves the community and the city. So it is the city's responsibility, not the county's. We are selling the property. Did I miss anything, Caroline? No. Okay. We are going to ask Chris Godley to speak for a few minutes about evacuation routes. I know a lot of you guys have been talking about that, and it's a top concern for me, and I know it is for you too. You want to come up? Come on. We'll do them later? Okay, that's great. Just call out a few people that are here, and David Gwine. Where are you, David? Oh, okay, right. There's David. He's going to come up from the city, and he's the director of development there at the city. And also, I want to say my director of the 3rd District, who has fielded a lot of people's calls, she is going to be working for a JPA called the Renewal Enterprise District, which is really a joint relationship between the county and the city where we can leverage dollars so that we can build more housing. And tonight, after 8 years of being a faithful public servant with me, which wasn't always easy, Michelle, this is her last night. So I wanted to, Michelle, stand up and applaud for her. Yeah, I'm still in denial that she's actually leaving after 8 years of having a wonderful partnership, but I do have a new district director, and she's also here tonight, so you'll be talking to her a bit. So Tracy, Tracy, stand up right there? Yeah, and yeah. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Gary. We're going to have a few brief presentations, and then we're going to allow for as much time as possible in terms of questions and answers. So it's Gary.
Thanks. My name is Gary Hockman. I've been asked to facilitate Michelle's going away party. So congratulations. Yeah, that's right. Can we go for lavash instead? Anyway, welcome everybody. This might be a little bit different kind of community meeting than some of you have attended, although some of you were here last night, so it'll feel a bit like a reprise from last night. I want to take a few minutes to go over the agenda so you know what to expect. And I'll review this in just a second, but I want to kind of amplify something that this is a two-way session. This is an opportunity for you to learn from your public servants and the county about what's planned and what's coming next. But it's also a chance for the county to listen to you. So there's question time, there's time for input, and so it's a two-way dialogue. But it's going to be structured to maximize participation throughout the evening. So in terms of those objectives, we're in this overview and introduction stage, and I'm actually going to set up quick table introductions in just a couple minutes, and then you'll be able to learn. We have presentations set up for you. So Caroline Judy, the head of General Services, will do a presentation. The names are up on that, in the blue writing up there. Lou Vasquez from Build Inc., which is a partner of Cal CHA, will be talking with you. David Guin from the city, who Shirley introduced, and Chris Godley, the Director of Emergency Management Services. So you'll learn a bit tonight too. And then we'll have a chance to generate questions, prioritize those questions, and ask those questions. What we don't get to tonight can get put up on the county website, so leave the questions with us that didn't get answered, but I think you'll find that throughout the course of the evening, you'll learn a lot. All right? Also want to share with you a few ground rules because we do want to maximize participation, and we know that a lot of people want to get their oar in the water, so again, we'll have some discussion at the tables, but I do want to encourage you to balance your participation with others. Again, many of us come with energy, ideas, questions, and we want to make sure everybody has a chance to participate. Secondly, it says respect the wide range of perspectives and experience in the room. Some of you might come with excitement, some of you frustration, and different ideas, different experiences. Many of us, including myself, are neighbors in Hidden Valley and have a vested interest in the outcomes, but we do represent a wide range of thoughts, so we want to make sure we honor those. We aren't here to make decisions, so we want to really respect the diversity of views. The third one is about going after the issues, not people. Frankly, it's easy to point blame, but let's not make this about personality. The idea here is to solve the issues, to represent our interests and needs, and not point fingers or try to cast blame. The fourth one is that this is a public process, and so we're going to need to manage it. So I'm going to ask that the person with the mic has the floor, and we'll actually go from table to table and ask a reporter to share the questions that that group is generating. But whoever has the mic has the floor, and that'll minimize people shouting out and asking questions or throwing their opinions over the wall. And then fifth is make the most of this opportunity. This is kind of unusual that we can come together as neighbors, have conversations, meet one another, learn from one another, and yeah, make the most of it, enjoy. Again, Michelle's birthday party, we have the lavash, the cookies, and help yourself to treats throughout the evening. Just, yeah, get up and take care of your needs. Did I say birthday? It's not your birthday. In terms of logistics, the restrooms are right outside the door. There's two on the right and left. And again, take care of your needs. We do plan to be out of here by 7 o'clock. And if last night is any indication, the panelists who will be participating and presenting will also stay for a few minutes. So if you have some questions, want to hang out and talk to them after the session, that should be okay too. Alrighty, so let me ask you all at the tables just to take 5 minutes, and this will go quickly, to introduce yourself to your neighbors. And what I mean by that is share your name, maybe where you live. So I live on a street called Cummings Drive in Hidden Valley. I've been there almost 30 years. And so you can share a bit about yourself, and then also what brought you here tonight. You're taking time out of your dinner hour, time when you normally would be doing something else. What's important to you about showing up tonight? So this is going to go quickly. We're 5 minutes, and so that's just a minute or so per person. But go around the table, introduce yourself. Who are you, and why are you here tonight? So I know that was a brief connection time, but hopefully you had a chance at least to do a quick go around and learn the names of people you're sitting with tonight. So I'm going to bring up our first presenter, Caroline Judy. Caroline is the Director of General Services for the county and is helping to manage the sale. She's going to present first, and as I mentioned, we have 3 other people that will be talking briefly after her. I know there's going to be questions that you have, and as they come up, I'm going to ask you just to jot them down, because we have a lot to get through in just about 30 minutes. So just jot down your questions. We will have a chance to identify them and prioritize them when all the speakers are done. So, Caroline, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, again, as Supervisor Zane said, and sharing your evening with us. I hope that we are able to explain clearly what it is that we are trying to accomplish with the sale of the Sinead property, and I hope that we're able to answer your questions, and also to listen and hear some of the concerns that you have. That's really our goal here, is both to share information and then also to listen and understand a little bit about some of the particular concerns that you may have about what's going to happen with this property. We know that it's a little confusing, where the county is selling the land, as Supervisor Zane mentioned, and that is we're selling it consistent with the California Surplus Property Act. We're going to talk more about that. But that is really the county's sole sort of ownership of the process here, and that any uses of the land are the city of Santa Rosa's responsibility. And so that distinction, I understand it's sometimes kind of challenging, and that there are questions that people have that really have to do with the uses, and that many times we can't answer those right now. So just to sort of say that at the outset. So first of all, this is actually a very exciting opportunity. It's not very often that we get the chance, we in local government and we as a community get the chance to think about the reuse of 75 acres or so of property that was previously and is currently zoned government institutional. And that's actually a pretty exciting thing to think about. What is the highest and best use? What is the opportunity for how this property could be utilized? And that's kind of where we are, guided by the California Surplus Property Act. We really have this unique opportunity to reuse this property. So first of all, this is also it's kind of a continuation of a process. The hospital, Sutter Hospital, first informed the county about 15 years ago that they were thinking about not renewing their lease for the property because of some of the concerns about seismic safety and those sorts of things. And so this has been a long conversation to get us to the point where we are today, where we have a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on the award of the sale of the property. So it's been a long path, and I know some of you have participated very actively at different points in that process, and I want to respect that. So what we brought before the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday was the conclusion of a solicitation process. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go. But I want to make very clear from the outset that what we're talking about is the sale of property. That's the responsibility here of the county. So go ahead. Okay, so under the California Surplus Property Act, our responsibility is, first of all, the Board of Supervisors authorized us to resell and restart the surplus property process last year. And the Surplus Act has specific requirements in it that we must notice housing sponsors, parks, recreation districts, schools, other governmental cities, and other governmental entities. So that is the requirement that we have under the Surplus Act. And then the Surplus Act, the legislative intent, the intent of the Surplus Act, and it's been amended over the years, but the intent of that act is to prioritize the use of surplus government lands for affordable housing. That's the primary stated requirement, is for affordable housing. And that's in recognition of the crisis that we have in the state of California, and specifically in our coastal areas where we don't have enough housing. We have a huge shortage of housing at all ends of the income spectrum, but particularly affordable workforce housing is really missing, and missing in our community here in Sonoma County. Okay. So said the California county must follow the surplus process. It's California Government Code 54220. And the requirement is to notice designated entities, housing sponsors, schools, park districts, etc., which we did. And the intent here is to create opportunities for affordable housing. The Act has specific provisions in it where once you've sent out that notice and you receive an interested letters coming back from housing sponsors that are interested in purchasing the property, there is a specific criteria in the Act that you have to use to evaluate those offers. And so the first criteria is there's a minimum threshold of affordability, and we call it the amount of affordability, and that's at 25%. So of an entire proposal, at least 25% has to be affordable. And that is written into the Act, and that's the first test that we have to use when we're evaluating between multiple offers that come in this stage of the surplus process. The second test has to do with the degree or the depth of affordability. And the Act says that you have to have, you look at, up to 80% area median income is the second test. So the offers have to serve the affordable housing requirements of the community in that 80% area median income. So what does that mean here in Sonoma County? And it's pretty shocking. I'm going to read you the numbers. Just a second. So the 80% area median income is considered low income. For one person, that's $60,500. And for a family of four, that's $86,400. And going up to the 100% and the moderate income at 120% for a family of four, $111,000, $950, or for one person, $78,000. That's shocking. That's shocking. I mean, 80% in area median income for a family of four, $86,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. But what that tells you is the crisis of affordability that exists in this community, where a family, two income earners making $86,000 can't afford housing. And that's a real problem. It creates all sorts of issues economically for the community. It's not a good thing, and I think we all know that. We all know that our kids can't afford to live here. Mine live in Washington State. It's really hard to find a rental property here that's affordable. There's a lot of consequences from the lack of affordability in our community, and particularly workforce housing. So we care about affordability at all spectrums, but it's really the shortage here in affordable workforce housing is a real issue. So I've explained that we've got these two tests that we have to follow under the California Surplus Property Act. So let's go to the next slide. So we issued a surplus notice in February. Supervisor Zane hosted a number of meetings here in the Rotunda in March and April, where we met and we heard from folks some concerns, and there were a number of questions that were asked, and we tried to answer all of those. We posted information with our answers up onto our Sinead website, And we'll continue to do that. So we had a meeting last night. We had some questions that were posed. We'll again take answers from you all tonight if we don't get to them. If you have questions on your cards, we'll post the answers up on our website. In May, we received 3 bids. And then from May until July, we were in the process of our county selection committee evaluating those 3 bids using that criteria that I was talking about a little bit earlier in the California Surplus Act. And then we went into a negotiations process with the 3 bidders. So then we brought forward at our board meeting on Tuesday, we brought forward a recommendation for award, and our board said, with Supervisor Zane's leadership, said, slow down a minute. We've heard from a number of people in the community who are concerned that they haven't had enough time to kind of sit with the bids, evaluate them, look at the information that was provided, and learn a little bit more about it. And so that's what we're doing. So they asked for us to come back in a couple of weeks and give an opportunity for these meetings to happen and for us to be able to answer some of the questions that you have. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Can you go back? I want to just emphasize one more thing there. So important, what we are trying to do is to get to the point where we have a purchase and sale agreement, hopefully by the end of the year, that we can bring back to the Board of Supervisors. And then once we complete that purchase and sale agreement, then it moves over into the city's process. And the buyer will work with the city, will work with the community to define what it looks like, what we're really talking about, the uses of this property will look like. And that is then, as we go on into the future, and I think David will talk a little bit about it, but it's a process that usually takes a couple of years to go through the entitlements and work through the land use process. So go ahead. Okay, so as we had 3 bids, Oakmont Senior Living, EAH, and Cal CHA. And there's 3 very different bids, and I'm going to give some more information, summary information about each of them as we go along here. But our county selection committee was staff from, at the executive level, from the General Services Department, from our Community Development Commission, from our Auditor Controller Tax Collector's Office, from County Council, and representatives from the County Administrator's Office. And so this county selection committee met a number of times. When we received the bids, we found there was missing information in all of them. And so we wrote back to the bidders and asked them to please provide the information that we had requested, which they did. We then reviewed that. And then we had interviews. We brought in all 3 of the bidders to meet with us, and we asked them additional questions so that we could learn a little bit more about their proposals. So go ahead to the next slide. So as I mentioned, the California Surplus Property Act gives us the criteria that we have to use to evaluate the bids. And the request for proposals we have to also wanted to look at the dollar value and whether there was any equity participation, the demonstrated financial capacity. So this was a criteria. What is the likelihood that the entity that is offering to purchase the property is going to be able to close on the sale, and that they will have sufficient resources, sufficient financial resources to actually be able to, pay the county for the property. And so that was the criteria that we were looking at there. And then the final category was the conditions of closing. What were the requirements or restrictions that the entity might have on the county in order to get to the actual closing, the actual transfer? And as the Surplus Property Act, again, the test for us is the amount of affordable housing at 25% or greater, and then the degree or depth of affordability. So let's go to the next slide. So this is just a very high-level comparison slide that we put together for the board presentation. There is a much more detailed chart that's in the attachments to the board item from the Tuesday board agenda. But this gives you the high level. So Oakmont Senior Living was the highest cash offer to the county. They offered $8 million. And they did not provide any equity opportunity. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. They offered a very fast closing, 30-day closing, which is pretty quick. And they met the requirement under the California Code at 25% affordable. They were proposing a 100% rental, concept for the eventual development, the way the property would eventually be used, and as permitted by the city of Santa Rosa. CalCHA offered $1, and a lot of people are asking, well, $1? What do you mean? And so what that's about, CalCHA is a joint powers authority under the state of California. They are a governmental entity, and it's common when we sell property between different governmental entities that we do simply a transaction. It's a transaction fee, really. It's just $1. And so that, although it may seem unusual, is not unusual in the transfer of property between governmental entities. They offered a $5 million equity advance. And so let's talk a little bit about equity and what that meant in the context of the sale proposals that we received. The property as it's currently entitled and currently zoned is zoned government institutional. It has a very low value as government institutional because the only purpose, the only use for the property right now can be consistent with that zoning. If we want to sell the property and somebody buys it and it's not used for government institutional, then it has to be rezoned. And so the property, when it's rezoned, would have a higher value than it does currently. And if you look at the appraisals that we've had, which are available on the website, you can see the values of the property are reflecting that government institutional usage and conditions of buildings and unknown fault lines with great specificity and some other things like that. So what CalCHA provided was an opportunity for the county to participate in the improved value of the property after it's been entitled and after the, there's been an eventual development approved by the city of Santa Rosa. And specifically what that offer entailed was at year 15, so they would issue bonds. At year 15, the county would have the opportunity to acquire the bonded indebtedness, so basically buy the property back for the value of the outstanding bonds, and then do one of three things. And I think I have a slide. We're talking about it a little bit later. But before we go there, I want to jump to finish my summary here. I'm getting ahead of myself. So CalCHA offered a 90-day close, and they offered 100% workforce housing, so 100% affordable, at targeting up to 80%, so three different categories, up to 80%, up to 100%, and up to 120% affordable. And when you look at who's in that category, that's our workforce. And it covers an entire spectrum, and I can share with you in detail, if people are interested, what sectors of our economy are in there. It's teachers, it's nurses, it's dentists, it's phlebotomists, it's financial advisors. I mean, it's the majority of our workforce is in that category. So EAH offered the lowest cash, and initially they had an initial offer where they said, we'll give you $8 million, and we want to split with you the cost of demolition on the buildings, the existing buildings. And we said, no, we're not interested in that. And so they came back with a revised offer of $4 million cash. There was no opportunity for equity participation. They had the longest close at 120 days, and they were meeting, same as OSL, the 25%, the threshold under the California statute of that first criteria, and also proposing rental. CalCHA and EAH we asked them in the interviews, was there a path to ownership? So could folks who initially rented potentially at some point be in a position where they could own the property or the unit that they were in? And the answer was yes. We could see doing that. We could see creating a path to ownership. And that was something that we found was important. So go on, please, the next slide. Okay. So the staff recommendation, just sort of summarizing here, was to award to CalCHA because they met and exceeded the California Surplus Act requirements at 100% affordable. And they met the degree of affordability requirement serving that up to 80%, up to 100, and up to 120% of the area median income. They addressed this incredible unmet need in our community, which is this middle income workforce housing. And so why is that? State and federal funding sources for housing target the extremely low and the low income spectrum of the affordable housing market. So when you look around Sonoma County, but California in general, many of the projects, the affordable housing projects that do get entitled and developed are in that extremely low income end, which is a need. There's a need for that. But that's where the state and federal funding is targeted. There isn't very much in the middle income or the workforce. And so that's really one of the things that appealed to us about the CalCHA proposal, is that it's hitting a segment of the market that we haven't really been able to address. And it's important for our community. So in addition, the equity opportunity is a significant community benefit for the county. We don't know precisely what that equity opportunity is going to look like, because we don't know precisely how many eventual units the city will permit on this property. So CalCHA submitted a pro forma. We asked all of the bidders to send us a pro forma. CalCHA submitted a pro forma, but the numbers in that pro forma are theoretical. They have to be. You have to pick something to do an analysis from. And but the point is, it's not the specifics of the numbers. The point is that the county will have an opportunity to participate in that equity at some point down the road. And that's where we see the value. We asked for a negotiated improvement on the offer, which was a $5 million advance on equity that would occur at the point of the issuance of bonds for the project. And we also negotiated a little bit shorter due diligence period at 90 days. One of the other things that we really liked about CalCHA and their partners, Build and Catalyst, was the experience of the group. So the team as a whole has tremendous experience. Lou Vasquez, who's here from Build, who's going to talk next, will tell you a little bit about his experience, but they have built a number of projects throughout San Francisco and other areas, including here in Sonoma County. And Catalyst, as an operator, also team that's very experienced. So we have a lot of confidence in the team as a whole and what they were proposing. Okay, so that was our staff recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, and our recommendation concludes the solicitation process. Just one final thing on that. Normally, what we would do when we are doing a real estate transaction is that they are, as most of you know, confidential negotiations, so that we can negotiate the best deal that we can for the public. Normally, what we would do is, if we're running a solicitation like this, that would happen. Staff would go through the evaluation process, and we would negotiate a contract. And we would come back to the board with that contract negotiated. We didn't do that this time. We came to the board in order to give the public and the board more of an opportunity to evaluate where we are with the 3 proposals and to give us guidance so that we can go back and then continue to work on negotiating the contract. So we are not in contract right now, and that's a very important distinction. And it's an unusual place for us to be at this point. So with that, I want to introduce Lou Vasquez, who is from Build, and I'm sorry, I'm running over. All right. I have a hard time being super concise. My apologies. We'll make it up. Here you go.
Hi, I'm Lou Vasquez. I'll keep it very short. I'm representing the team of CalCHA, Catalyst, and Build. I'm the founder and partner in Build. We've been developing in San Francisco for 20 years now. Have entitled 13 projects over that time, totaling about 3,000 residential units. Very excited about this project. Very excited to be here. We think it's a wonderful opportunity to create middle-income housing. And I want to stress that it's middle-income housing. So what we're talking about is housing public servants, young professionals, retirees, people making up to $140,000 in a household, and providing that housing in significant numbers. What Carolyn mentioned earlier was that the housing that's being built right now is either subsidized, very low-income housing, or high-income luxury housing. What's most necessary is that middle-income housing. It's not being built. It is not feasible usually. So this is what we're proposing here. Our process involves a lot of outreach. This is how we start every project, with meetings with stakeholders, meetings with people who are concerned and express that interest and show up at these meetings. We will craft a project and build consensus. That is our process. We can't come in and build something that doesn't fit the neighborhood. Our projects don't stop at the property line. They add to the communities that we build in. That's our reputation, that's our brand. And so I look forward to working with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. We're actually still on time. We have a couple more brief presentations, and they'll provide some context for the questions you might have. So let me introduce David Gunn.
Great, thank you. My name is David Guin. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Santa Rosa and oversee the development process. So I was asked to give a little overview of what that process might look like. So you just heard, if the property does sell and the county does sell the property, an applicant would get input on what that project looks like, and that's considered to us a concept drawing or a concept idea and a description. The minute that happens, they would walk into our front counter and talk to us and meet with us. That would trigger and start a bunch of processes. The first would be an environmental process, which is the EIR process, which is a very extensive, lengthy process that addresses traffic, air quality, impacts to the resources, natural resources, the faults, the wetlands, everything that that project would have an impact on our community. So that process usually takes about a year. In tandem to that, what we also do is require that concept to go through a public process. We would have it go through concept design review with our design review board, and we would go through a technical review with our city staff to make sure that they're addressing issues. On top of that, because we're in the hillside, we have a hillside development ordinance, then ultimately goes through major design review. And the big one is a general plan change. So as you just heard, this is a government institution property. So what happens is when somebody walks in the door with a concept, we have to look at that use and does it match with what's allowed on this property. If it doesn't, they have to change the general plan. That's the largest decision the city council makes from a land use perspective, changing the plan that governs our entire city. So that is a very public process. It's a very open process, and it requires the city council to make findings that change should be made for this use, whatever use is proposed. So all that happens, and I'm kind of listing off all the different things, but eventually that takes about 18 to 24 months if things are moving. So it's about a 2-year process with a bunch of opportunities for the public engagement. And our responsibility is to make sure whatever's brought to our office involves the public through that process. You guys, everyone has an opportunity to weigh in from the technical side all the way through ultimately the approval of the project. So that's what I have.
Thanks, and you'll have an opportunity to address questions to David during the Q&A as well. I want to bring up Chris Godley. Chris is the Director of Emergency Management Services for the county.
So the way I explain my job is, there's always some paranoid guy in the corner of the room. That's what I do for the county of Sonoma. I worry about everything that could possibly go wrong. Flood, fire, earthquake, cyber. Anybody heard about PG&E's plans this summer? Generators? Yeah, okay, that's what I'm working on right now. But I'm here tonight because we understand the concerns you might have regarding fire safety and evacuation in this community. It's pretty significant. How many here from October 2017? Anyone not here? Not willing to show that hand, okay. But it is an issue. I mean, that fire was profound. I helped write the City of Santa Rosa's emergency operations plan and their wildfire annex prior to the fires. And we took a look at what was going to go wrong in the City of Santa Rosa, and none of us really understood how fast and how ferocious and just how dynamic a fire could be. And so it's really shaken things up, not just here in Sonoma County, but I'm telling you, nationwide, people are now paying attention to what we're doing here in Sonoma County in terms of how we're responding to what we really see as a new evolution in this kind of threat. And so your community is right there. It's really part of what we need to be doing. I also remember evacuating that night. It was hard for me to go to work and put my family on the road when everything was that crazy. So I understand a little bit of it. I did not lose. I did not suffer the loss of my home. But I get that uncertainty. When I staggered out into the street at 1 a.m. and I saw the fire, it was pretty brutal. So to that end, we take that into our planning processes. Alert and warning. I know a couple of people got the alerts that night. Most of us didn't. We're fixing that. We have fixed that. We're using all these systems. If you've not signed up for SoCo Alert right now, SoCoAlert.com.net, whatever you want to put it in there, please sign up. That's the best way for us to get a hold of you. And that's how we're really going to address this evacuation. It's land use planning, and it's also safety, home personal safety, preparation of our properties, making sure that we and our neighbors are safe, that we're not causing fire to spread, making sure that we're prepared as a family to receive a warning and then take action to be able to evacuate. And so to that end, we are undertaking a significant evacuation planning process in Sonoma County, identifying communities, evacuation zones, really trying to address the challenges that we have in many of these communities of one way in, one way out, those kinds of things. Bad roads on a good day, even worse at 3 a.m. with smoke. And so we're really trying to address that. And to that end, we're also supporting the City of Santa Rosa and helping facilitate that evacuation planning process. We're supporting them with developing the evacuation zone maps, really identifying the challenges that each of these communities have. And we're also beginning to work and develop, and this month rolling out prototype evacuation guides for residents, saying, hey, if you live in this community, this is what you want to think about. It's a piece of paper, two-sided, and I'm asking everyone when they get it eventually to tape it to the inside of the closet door by the front door. And then you rip it off at 3 o'clock in the morning. It tells you what to do, where to go, how to get there. And it may not be driving out of the area. It may be going to an area of safe refuge instead. Not all of us, these roads aren't built for everybody to go the same place at the same time. And then we're practicing this. In each of these communities that we're targeting, we're going to be conducting evacuation drills. The City of Santa Rosa has indicated they're also going to be moving in that direction. They have a prioritized list of communities they're going to be working with, and we're really trying to help move this on the fast track because we understand the concern that's out there. We really do understand that, and it is a significant priority for us. So if the power doesn't go out this summer, we're going to be doing pretty good in rolling this out and getting it into everyone's hands. So I'll be here for questions during the panel as well as afterwards, but thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So we're going to get you busy identifying the questions you have. We're going to do this at the table to maximize participation and also to prioritize questions. So at your table, in a simple go-round, take turns identifying the questions you have for the presenters, 1 question per white card. All right. If you have a comment, suggestion, or input, those go on the colored cards at your table, and we have a lot more cards if you need them. And then as a group, prioritize them. What are the most important questions at your table? And we get to answer most of the questions in the room this way, but everybody gets to write their individual cards, but then talk them through for a few minutes. So the most important questions from your table sort to the top. And then we're going to ask each table to have a reporter, and when we pass the mic, we'll ask you to pick from the top of your deck and pick the most important questions. You only have 8 minutes for this. This isn't social time, so work quickly. Somebody keep their eye on the clock. And then some of your tables have volunteer facilitators. Could you raise your hand? And if you don't have a volunteer facilitator, pick one just to keep you on track and make sure everybody has a chance to participate. All right, so 8 minutes, and when we're done with that, we'll come to the tables and ask you for your most important questions. Thank you. take one more minute to finish up, please. All right, it's time to wrap up your conversations. I'm hopeful you have a list of questions at your table. Let me invite the panelists up to the front too. So Supervisor Zane and Caroline and David and Lou and Chris. So you all know how this works. This is like the Merv Griffith show, and I go around to your table and ask your reporter to ask a question. Panelists, are you ready? Okay, could I have your attention, please? So we're going to start over here at this table. We'll make our way around. Last night we were able to get through each table twice. And again, if you don't get your question answered, you can either stay later or leave it at the door with Michelle, and it'll get answered on the website. So you may not like all the answers you hear. I'm going to tell you that in advance. I know this is a difficult process for some, but I'm going to ask you not to pile on and yell or shout out things if you don't have the mic. The person with the mic gets to ask the questions, okay? So let's start at this table, and the first question you have.
Hi, my name is Craig Meltzner, and my questions are for Caroline, Judy, and Mr. Vasquez. How does the Cal CHFA proposal meet the Health and Safety Code Section 50053 requirement that the proposal serve lower income households? The surplus land requirements require that 25% of the units serve lower income households as defined in Section 50079.5 of the Health and Safety Code. And that defines lower income households as households and rents that are affordable at 30% of 60% of AMI. You showed two slides to the group. You showed one slide that compared the three proposals. Two of the proposals were being shown at 25% low income. The third proposal from Cal HFA you showed at 100% low income. The following slide you showed as the Cal CHFA proposal targeting low, median, and moderate income households, 80, 100%, and 120%. That is not a 100% low income project. That is a 80% that's a low to moderate income housing project. And I can assure you that, and Mr. Vasquez characterized the units as serving households with incomes up to $140,000. That is not a low income household. So I would like to conclude by saying that my concern, and this has to do with a condition of sale by the county, it has nothing to do with the planning by the city, that the proposal should prioritize serving the broad range of economic needs in our county, which should prioritize low-income households with incomes less than 60% AMI, which the other proposals did, and which the Cal CHFA proposal did not.
Thank you.
So I'll clarify one thing and then hand it to Lou, may be able to clarify a little bit more too. The proposal from Cal CHA was up to 80%, so 1/3 at up to 80%, up to 120, and up to 100 to 120. So that the mix, the final mix, will be something that is dependent upon the community input process and working through the city. So they met the criteria under the California Government Code statute for the 25% affordable. They exceeded it, proposing 100% affordable, and they met the criteria under the depth of affordability.
No, I'd just say we met the criteria that was presented to us. So that's
We'll go to the next table.
Hello, I'm Mark Epstein. I just wanted to ask, as part of the evaluation of the proposals, I know that this proposal means a loss of revenue to the city and maybe over time loss of revenue to school districts. How is that factored into the decision about the economics of the option?
So the evaluation criteria were based on the California Government Code relating to the Surplus Act. The Surplus Act recognizes that the provision of affordable housing is the public benefit or community benefit. We recognize that when you build affordable housing in the state of California, and if it's a public entity that's building that housing, that it is exempt from property taxes. So that, yes, you're correct. There is no property tax gain as a result of a affordable housing development eventually permitted. However, there is sales tax that's generated by the people who live there, and the broader benefit that we're statutorily have to meet is providing affordable housing. So that is the benefit. Schools are backfilled by the state of California under Prop 98. So there is no loss of property tax revenues to schools.
So let me ask it just slightly differently. So would the other proposals have had the same economics? Would the other proposals also have resulted in a loss of tax revenue?
So very different natured proposals, right? So thank you. So OSL is a private entity, right? The affordable component would have had the same provision. The 75% that they were proposing market rate would have paid property taxes.
So Caroline, there was also one question from the web. Do you have the card there? So we have listeners who aren't in the room tonight who are listening on the webcast, and we received a question from one of them.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me, Gary. So the question was, where does your current proposal reflect local neighbor input? And what we have in front of us is not a proposal, it's a sale, it's a recommendation for award of a sale. The neighborhood input, as was mentioned by David, will be very extensive once we get past, and this is part of it, but once we get past the actual purchase and sale agreement. We're not talking about specifics of an actual development right now. We're talking about the sale of land, and the final design, the final uses of the property will be determined as we go forward through the city's process.
Great, thank you. Question from this table.
Yes, hi. My name is Frank Baumgardner, and my main question is this a done deal? In other words, it doesn't seem fair to me. You're not giving the other bidders a chance to raise their bid.
So thank you. We did negotiate with all of the bidders when we met with them in our interviews. We talked through the proposals that they had submitted for the price and terms, and we asked them questions and asked for improvement of various aspects of their bids. In the case of EAH, as I mentioned, we negotiated away what they had suggested, which was that the county pick up 50% of the demolition cost with CalCHA, and so EAH revised their bid and sent it back. CalCHA, we negotiated the $5 million equity advance, and also we negotiated in improved closing terms. The discussion with OSL was a very much, here's our offer. There wasn't a lot to negotiate there.
Thank you. We'll go to this table.
Hi, Brad Duncan. So at previous meetings, county said their primary focus was gaining the best financial deal for the taxpayers in this very room. And tonight, it was stated that the primary focus is the sale of the property. So why is the county wanting to enter into this equity partnership with all the unfunded liability on pension? Why not go after the best, highest price for the taxpayers with the quickest close? Why is the county getting into this long contracted bond future proposal that is full of uncertainty?
The reason that we are interested in the equity participation is that it offers a greater upside potential for potential, yes, because we don't have final numbers. I can't say decisively that it is X million dollars, but it offers the county the opportunity to benefit in the improved value of the property, which with the cash offers, we don't. And when you, again, if you go back and look at the appraisals, the appraised values reflect the low value of the land given its current zoning. The equity participation is something that we felt was creative, a creative solution that allows us to get the best deal that we could for the taxpayer, albeit 15 years down the road, on the equity side. In addition to the broad public benefit of 100% affordable housing at the middle income level, which we talked about has not been well served throughout the community. So that combination of community benefits is really what led us to recommend to award to the board the CalCHA offer.
Thank you. Question at this table.
Glad to have a microphone. I lose my voice about noon every day. I'm Tom Brown. Our number one question is what happens if the project that the city is prepared to approve is of a scale and character too small for the proponent or the bond market?
I think that there's a critical mass, if you will, to these projects. And so if the project is too small, we would simply not go ahead with it. That's part of the purchase and sale agreement. So we will spend millions of dollars to entitle this project, millions of dollars, which are all at risk. So, we as soon as we know that we don't want a property that we can't do anything with, that is encumbered as it is, yeah.
The county's banking on that deal.
I can answer that. So sorry. The CalCHA model, as a joint powers authority and a governmental entity, their model is not to hold on to property in perpetuity. Their model is to acquire property, improve that property for the purpose of middle income affordable housing, and then to return the property, the improved asset, back to the governmental entity at the end of the bond period. So typically the bonds are, and these are, public lease revenue bonds or private lease revenue bonds, the term is usually 35 years. So they have these options to reacquire the property at year 15. And I mentioned that I was going to describe it, and then I forgot as I went through my presentation. But there are 3 options at year 15. One is you retain the property, so the county could acquire the property back for the outstanding value of the bonds, so retain. The other is refinance, so you could refinance the outstanding obligation and perhaps benefit from a different interest rate, et cetera. And then after you've refinanced, you could either continue to retain it or you could resell it And then the third option is to resell. And there is a market for buyers of affordable housing projects because there is a long-term revenue stream associated with the rents, the rental income. So we can't predict what the county board of supervisors in 15 years would do, but possibly they would look at the opportunity to acquire the property and immediately resell it. So find a buyer and resell the property. And what that gives the public entity, the county would have the opportunity at that time to take out the accrued equity in the property. So whatever the market value of the property is beyond the outstanding bonded indebtedness.
Thank you. And I think generally what I'm hearing is there is risk attached to this.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I thought he was. No, one question though per table. Do you want to do it?
I don't want to argue. All right, I'm sorry. My name is Morgan Pickering. I asked this question the other day, and to follow up to Tom's question. When you guys went into this proposal, surely you must have had an idea of how many units were going to be built to make this thing feasible for the project to go forward, as Tom alluded to. So with that in mind, and I know we're not supposed to get into the weeds here as far as details of what you guys are going to do, but obviously you must have had some idea of how many units are going to be built in order for this project to be feasible. And we've read in the paper that anywhere from 500 to 700 units. It'd be nice to know. I know you must know this, because otherwise, why would you proceed with the purchase of this, or the sale of this?
We don't know. It's a simple answer. We don't. Our proposal, the county asked for a proposal that included a hypothetical pro forma. We picked the number out of a hat, 500, because we knew the previous one had been 800. We knew that there's probably a minimum, which is 200 to 300. So we picked something in the middle, 500. We did a purely hypothetical example. So I have no idea how many will be approved ultimately.
Could you explain the pro forma too, Lou? People might not be familiar with how that works.
Right. So we do, for every project, we put together the total cost of the project from day one, from acquisition and pre-acquisition through build out, and then what we call stabilization, which is when the project is fully occupied. At that time, when the project is fully occupied, our revenue has to exceed our cost and the cost of carrying. Like any business, it has to have, in order to be a successful project, it has to have sufficient income to pay its debt, which in this case are the bonds, and in a private situation, it makes a profit. In this situation, any surplus revenue goes back to the county. So these pro formas have all of the costs, land cost, legal cost, consultant cost, design, construction, maintenance and operation. Everything is included there. We do our best, we're telling the future, and I don't have my crystal ball broke many years ago. So, but we do our best to project these. And the private projects we finance based on these pro formas. This public project, very similar. The only difference being that the excess revenue does not go to profit. It goes back to the county. There's never a private entity that owns. This is a sale to a public entity. It's really a transfer from the county to CalCHA and ultimately reverting to the county. There's never private ownership in this chain. So that we think it's a really powerful tool. We know it's worked. CalCHA purchased the Annandale apartments in March or April, which is a completed project, which was market rate. It's now transforming that to a middle income project with permanently, or for the life of the bonds, with permanently, not permanently affordable for the time of the bond. So deed restricted incomes is what it is. It's restricted incomes. And so that's, we think, and just a little, if you'd allow me, California has a deficit of 3.5 million homes right now. The job growth in the state, the job growth in the county, the job growth in the region has greatly exceeded the number of homes that we're building. What is being built right now is lower income housing, 55% AMI and below, which is subsidized, and you can get tax credits, you can do a lot of things to build those, make those affordable to build, and luxury housing, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million homes. That's what's being built. What's not being built is anything in between. So the neighborhoods around here, which are middle income, most of them, are not being built right now in California. The stuff that was built when I was a kid in the 50s and 60s and 70s is not being built. There's a huge shortage. We're addressing that shortage. We build at all levels of income. We build 55 and below, we build 80 to 120, and we build 180 and higher. We build at all levels of income. So for us, this is part of that program.
Good, thank you. Question from this table?
We had questions about the mix of the affordable components. So we heard 80, 100, and 120%. And I'm sorry, did you say, Carolyn and Judy, that would be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3? Is that what this is? And so trying to understand that, what is the rent for those things, and how much other rental housing in that area is there in Sonoma County currently?
So, yeah, well, the way we calculate the rents is it's 1/3 of your household income is what the rent is on these units. So, for instance, if your household makes $120,000 a year, your rent is $40,000 a year. That divided by 12, that's $3,400 a year for 2 or 3 bedroom.
$3,400 a month.
Sorry, a month. Yeah, sorry. No, it's the former.
Another question that came from our web listeners: are there plans to widen Shenate? What are the plans to deal with increased traffic?
No, we don't know.
They don't know.
So part of the analysis, part of the CEQA analysis, the environmental analysis, will be to look at the impact, and part of that's traffic. So the analysis requires that any impacts identified, and if there's an impact, such as higher traffic counts, it has to be mitigated. So that mitigation could be widening or some other way to make sure that that impact doesn't affect. So that's the process. Is as part of approval, they're going to have to show how they're mitigating that in order for it to be approved.
Yeah, so not the answer everybody wants to hear, but yeah, it's the reality. Let's keep going around the room.
Yes, I wanted to, first of all, give you just a piece of advice, which is when you go forward, you should probably get a market feasibility consultant to evaluate the whole pro forma. At this stage, it's natural that it's rough and you're trying to fill in the parameters. But I'm curious, in the pro forma, every year you break even, which is how it's been designed. But if in some years the rent exceeded the expenses and there was residual income, what would happen with that income?
That would flow back to the county.
Okay, for the whole term of the agreement?
Yes.
All the, quote, profit flows back to the county, I think I heard you say.
Right.
Is there another question at this table? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, I'm Chris Corsi. You mentioned that this is all about transaction between the county and Cal CHA. I'm wondering why we're not hearing from Cal CHA, and also whether there's been any kind of independent review of Cal CHA's ability to deliver this and to perform over time. You talked about their model, but as I understand, they're only a few months old, so I'm interested in hearing more about Cal CHA.
So the reason Cal CHA isn't here is because this all came up last week, and both the representatives from Cal CHA and Catalyst had family vacations planned, and we're out of the country essentially. So they're not here. They'll be here in subsequent meetings. Cal CHA is 6 months old. It was formed in January. Its track record so far is that it's purchased 3 assets and is managing them. including, like I mentioned, Annadel. You know, its long-term performance is, you know, there's risk there, you know, and you know, I think that will come out in the purchase and sales agreement in terms of what the terms of that are, and it's probably going to have to be addressed long term. One thing that you have to remember is that these are private bonds that are being sold. We can't sell the bonds if the entity selling the bonds is at risk. The market will sort that out. So far, they've sold the bond issuances have been oversubscribed. So, you know, the performance, the financial performance is there. The long-term record for that particular entity is not. This similar structures have been used previously successfully, just not by this particular agency.
Thank you. Question at this table.
Government Code Section 54227A, which has been referred to several times regarding multiple bids, specifically says that when an entity receives proposals from multiple bidders that satisfy the 25% low income, the entity that proposes to provide the greatest number of units that meet the requirements of Section 54225.5 at the deepest level of affordability shall be given priority. So, Cal CHA was not the bidder proposing units at the deepest level of affordability. So why didn't either OSL that proposed 25% low income or EHS that proposed 25% extremely low income get the preferred rating in your excuse me, just give me 1 second, in the recommendation with respect to the dollar value of the bid.
So there are two criteria under the code that I mentioned. The first one is that they have to meet the 25% affordable. Correct. And Cal CHA exceeded that criteria by proposing 100% affordable housing. So because the entire eventual development would be 100% affordable, they exceeded that criteria. And when we applied that to then looking at the secondary criteria, which was the depth or degree of affordability, we felt that they met that 80%, up to 80%, up to 120, they met the affordability criteria under the statute. So when we acknowledge that, when you read the board transmittal and you look at the documents that we presented to the Board of Supervisors, we said that EAH and OSL scored higher, they got higher points than Cal CHA on that second criteria because they were targeting a lower income group. But because Cal CHA was proposing 100% affordable for the entire proposal, that outweighed the second category.
Where in the statute do you find the authority to make that calculation? Because from my perspective, I'm a lawyer.
Full transparency, yeah.
To allow staff to make
So we were guided by our counsel, and I'm sure, as we all know, that sometimes attorneys have different interpretations. Reasonable people can disagree. But so in our evaluation, we looked at, as I mentioned, the 100% affordability, and we felt that had a lot of weight in our evaluation.
Okay, so can we go on, Joe? Please? We have other people that have been waiting.
Yeah, real quick. After a hypothetical close of escrow, does the county establish minimum standards by which the new owner has to maintain the property during the lengthy permitting zoning process, which could be 2 to 3 years? Are standards set?
So where we are right now is that we are taking forward an award recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. And I mentioned at the outset, we're not yet in contract. One of the things that we are very interested in, obviously, is once we close the property, how will the property be managed and maintained? And then once the property is improved and winds its way through the city's process, how will that property be maintained? Because the asset at the either 15-year or at the end of the bond term comes back to the county. We want to make sure that that property that's coming back to us has been maintained appropriately and has the value that we're looking for, right? So those will be provisions that we will include and will be negotiated into the purchase and sale agreement.
I do hate cutting people off, but we're trying to get to as many tables as we can. And again, if you have subsequent questions, follow-ups, please stay, make an appointment with any of these people. They're your public servants. They want to answer your questions. So another question from this table? Anything? We had another question come in via, oh, sorry, Misty. We had another question come in via the, we did, well, it was the question. Okay, you told me that it was asked already. It was a question about Sinead. We'll come back, promise. Okay, we'll come back. $3,400 a month is a house payment in many areas. Is rent to own an option?
I think yes. After the property is returned to the county will have the option to do whatever it wants with it, including selling it individually or selling them as a group, selling them into ownership. So that will be the county's prerogative at the end of the term.
Our question is in many ways a follow-up to that. We put a high value on a sense of ownership by the people who live in the neighborhoods, because we see what happens when that doesn't happen. We see what happens if people don't have decent management, don't solve the problems of the leaking roof or the refrigerator or whatever they're managing. So you're telling me that the county is going to be in a position to tell people what they can have rent to buy. Who in this pool actually manages the property on a day-to-day basis? And will it be somebody local that we know?
Yeah, the property will be managed by a local management team, and we have no idea. There's several to be determined. There's several out there that the professional management is done.
So we'll come back to this table.
Bert Mendenhall. I happen to live one street down from the hospital. I was kind of sent here by my neighbors. I volunteered, I guess. But our question is, it's bad enough now, say next month when school starts up, to get out on Sinead. And I know you don't have the answer to this, but Sinead to everyone, you can't widen it. I mean, the only option is to stack it, and I don't see that. So where is our access to escape a fire when that road gets flooded? Because they're not going to go Parker Hill or through Hidden Valley. It all comes here. And yes, we lost some with the hospital, but I think that's already exceeded what we used to have. I challenge each one of you to come here when school's on to try and get out from a side road.
Any reaction? There's no easy answer. That's obvious. Yep.
Not yet. Not yet, there's no answer.
I mean, I think you bring up a good point, and part of it is once a project's identified and we identify what the use is, that's the analysis we have to go through. And again, we have to, as the agency that's responsible for certifying the EIR, has to show that whatever is proposed is not going to have an adverse impact. So you've just raised the challenge that one of the challenges that this project's going to have to go through.
We are hitting the stroke of 7, and I promised we'd be closing now. I also promised you that our panelists would stick around. So if you have questions, want to talk to some of the folks, or you want to submit your questions, Michelle, would you raise your hand? Michelle's going to be responsible for getting these questions answered and on the website. So, so if you haven't had a chance, just legible question on a white sheet of paper or the white cards would be great. If you have comments, put them on the colored cards.
Sorry, I didn't get to say this earlier, but there were some questions last night about the measure or the parcel J, and then the ag and open space easements, and how many acres that is. So the county ag and open space district is going to be gifting whatever to the community or the city, the ag and the parcel J that you guys had worked so hard to get. And so the combination between parcel J and the 2 other easements that were already there and the water agency flood zone is 45 acres. So that's not for sale. This is about a 72-acre project, or sell, I should say, and 45 acres will not be sold. Those easements are in perpetuity, so I wanted to add that.
So on behalf of Supervisor Zane and the county, thank you very much for coming out and putting your energy into this. Really appreciate your participation. Good night.